Today's episode is all about managing large class sizes in pro wrestling. Now, this is a very great problem to have business-wise, but it can be very frustrating for a wrestler who is on the outside of the ring waiting for their turn all the time. If you're a trainer, this is going to give you lots of tips on how you can program with more efficiency. But if you're just a trainee, you're going to get lots of advice on how you can make the most of these scenarios to ensure that you keep progressing in your training. One of the biggest issues that most schools have is that they have one ring, but lots of trainees. Now, unlike other things like martial arts, where you can do a lot of sparring together in pairs, you can do everything at the same time. We don't have that luxury in pro wrestling. You know, we have 2 people working in the ring. We have 10, 15, maybe 20 people on the outside just waiting their turn. This doesn't mean that you should pass it off as that's just pro wrestling, deal with it, because I think there are some really effective ways to manage large class sizes. First and foremost, you want to make sure there's some set focuses in what you program for your training. For me personally, I try to keep it to 2 to 3 themes for the night, and I try to progress those in future training sessions. So, you know, the conditioning work might look at footwork, and then that might lead to some takedowns. And then we might get in the ring, we might put that all together while applying a little bit of match psychology, and that's kind of it. That way there's a very clear progression. They're getting lots of reps in at the same time without darting their attention in and out, so that even though they might be outside the ring for a period of time, you know, that's unavoidable, that's natural. They've still done plenty and they can still take a lot from the session. Within that, I try to tick as many boxes as I can at the same time. So for example, a conditioning exercise, instead of doing hundreds of push-ups that are not really going to serve much of a purpose to everything we do later in the training session, I try to choose things that lead in nicely to the next. The same goes for the in-ring drills. If you're just programming the same drills you do night in, night out because they're easy and they don't require a whole lot of thought, but they don't really have any correlation to what you're actually doing for the main chunk of that theme of the night, well, I think you're missing a great opportunity to do so. I like to use in-ring drills as a way to recap previous weeks. So for example, we may run a common drill like a man in the middle drill, an international running spot type drill, but I'll make sure to incorporate moves that we've been covering in previous weeks. I then like to move on and maybe introduce a new move within that. By doing this, you're going to make sure you get plenty of reps in, particularly if technique is one of the themes you're covering. And speaking of technique, where possible, if you can get people pairing off and working through technique, perhaps on the mats or outside of the ring or even in the ring, you know, as long as there's no degree of safety risk, that's a great way to have the coach going out, helping people individually so they can get plenty of reps before they get in the ring and apply those techniques in greater sequences. This also leads me to the word scaffolding, which for teacher nerds is a very common phrase, but essentially it's just adding little bits on at a time. So they're taking previous knowledge and then furthering that knowledge rather than going 0 to 100, teaching them a brand new concept and expecting them to prosper. So you want those logical progressions with everything you do. Now, when it comes to in-ring drills where you do need to have 2 people in the ring working and everyone else watching on the outside, if you can utilize things like flowing drills, particularly when no feedback is really needed, maybe it's things they've been covering before, they've done it plenty of times, that's a great way to get more work done in a small space of time. You could have 2 people doing a certain sequence. That sequence leads straight to the next person coming in and continuing and repeating the same sequence. If you do need to give feedback, you could always stand outside the ring, wait till they exit, give them a quick piece of feedback and move on. Especially when you have 2 coaches at the same time, this is a hell of a lot easier. But if you do want to stop the class and give group feedback, I feel like there's 2 effective ways to do so. The first one is to let them all run the drill through, then at the end give them an overall feedback for the group, something you saw a lot of throughout. The only thing is this isn't very specific, but for time efficiency, it is a great way to do it. And then you have them run it again and work on those points that you gave them. The second way is to give individual feedback, but if you're going to do so, keep it as brief as humanly possible. Yes, people on the outside can learn from others' feedback, and this is why, segueing a little bit, I do think if you are a trainee in that situation where you are just watching a lot and you're not actually being active in the ring because you're waiting your turn, learning from the feedback others are given is vital. You are going to learn things that you never even entertained the thought of. These could be things that you were about to make the same mistake, but now that you've heard it, you're going to get in the ring and not do that same thing. So it is important. However, on the coach's perspective, stick to 1 or 2 main points. that trainee might come in the ring, they might do 5 things wrong. They might do 10 things wrong. They might do everything wrong. Pick the most important things that they need to know now. Pick 1, pick 2 at the very most, and give them that. Any more than that, it's time consuming, it's overwhelming, their confidence is gonna take a massive knock, which also brings me to my next point. Compliment sandwiches work best. Try to find something they did well or okay or fine. Give them a little boost of confidence before they get in the ring for their next round. Now here at the EPW school, I do run the advanced class, which we call the pro class. And within that, there is a lot of deeper psychology within our training. So there's often times where they're expected to work a match or work a segment of a match or spend a bit of time discussing a theme and then giving them time to put that together in their own context. So yeah, there's gonna be lots of downtime where there is inactivity. And it is very time consuming. If you think you've got 10, 15 trainees and they're pairing off, putting together a spot, coming back, running that spot both ways, you're looking at half an hour to an hour on one individual spot. So what I like to do is, in those scenarios, have them run it just one way. I'll pair them off, I'll give them a short space of time to quickly put something together, if at all. They'll run it one way and that's it. By doing that, yes, okay, one person is getting experience being the heel, one person the babyface, but they are both learning the same concept at the same time. And then you could have them run it the opposite way, but maybe change the drill the next time round. It's another great way to get a lot done in as short a space of time as possible. And above all that, if you can have 2 coaches, that's another great way to split the class. We've had it in the past where some were working in the ring, some were working on the mats, then they alternated, or if there were those times where they had things that they could do outside, such as put matches together, well, that's when the other group was in the ring working and vice versa. So a lot of this is common sense, but I guess above all, I'm just saying be mindful of your time. There's not a lot of it, but there's plenty you can get done if you keep the tempo high and if your training is planned, organized, and focused. Anyway, let me know what you think. If you have any comments, drop it in the box below. I'd love to know how your trainings look, how they're structured. I only see what happens in front of me here and what I discover from my own learnings outside of pro wrestling. So I'd love to know how things are run around the world in your own schools.